Reality check. You thought standard football was brutal. Wait until you see the off-field rap sheets. Millions of dollars, illegal schemes, and dynasties built entirely on glowing green juice. Welcome to the juiced era, ladies and gentlemen. A glorious time when standard playbooks were aggressively replaced by top-secret, highly questionable underground chemistry experiments. Forget about natural talent or hard work. The only thing bigger than the star players' massive egos were their artificially inflated, balloon-like, cartoonish muscles. Let us look back at the so-called golden illusion. Picture the perfect American hero on the field, waving to the adoring crowd, lifting shiny trophies. The media absolutely loved these guys. They called them genetic freaks of nature, praising their unbelievable strength as if they were actual demigods walking among mortals. Even the coaches played along with the beautiful fairy tale. They looked the cameras dead in the eye and praised their strict diets of chicken breast and broccoli. But if you peeked behind the curtain into the sacred locker room, you would quickly realize that Mother Nature had absolutely zero involvement in this success story. Our golden boys weren't just hitting the gym harder, they were hitting the secret stash of magic vitamins provided by guys who definitely weren't certified doctors. The billionaire owners knew exactly what was happening. As long as the ticket sales skyrocketed and the merchandise flew off the shelves, they happily turned a blind eye. Because why would anyone care about player health when you can build a multi-billion-dollar football dynasty fueled entirely by shady, neon green energy drinks? Enter the fixers. The slimy lawyers and shady doctors creeping through the locker room shadows, carrying briefcases that practically glowed in the dark with illegal performance boosters. It was a simple transaction, really. Trade your long-term organ function for a shiny championship ring and a massive contract extension. Who could possibly resist that deal? One quick sip of the magic neon juice, and suddenly, a very average linebacker is tossing 300-pound defenders around the field like they are weightless paper dolls. We are talking about a totally ridiculous 500% increase in raw, unadulterated power. Their muscles inflating like literal balloons in a cartoon sketch. The illusion was absolutely perfect, and the league was making more money than ever before. But, as we all know, fake muscles eventually pop, and the truth always leaks. Let us take a closer look at the daily routine. Forget about standard protein shakes or endless hours of boring weightlifting. That was for absolute losers. Our beloved superstars had a completely different breakfast of champions. They gathered around the shady lockers like little kids waiting for an extremely illicit ice cream truck. The magical vitamins were strictly distributed by guys wearing cheap suits who possessed zero medical degrees but had a profound understanding of underground chemical enhancements. A quick handshake, a massive stack of unreported cash, and suddenly, you are the proud owner of a glowing green pill that alters your entire DNA. Pop one of these radioactive candies into your mouth, and instantly your neck circumference doubles. You start sweating pure neon energy and breathing like a dragon. The head coaches absolutely notice the terrifying physical mutations. But hey, as long as you can tackle a moving truck, nobody questions your bizarre sudden growth spurt. They seriously expected us to believe that this miraculous transformation was the direct result of eating plain boiled chicken breast and a handful of steamed broccoli. I mean, look at this guy. He is practically ripping his own uniform to shreds just by breathing. And they politely call it a naturally gifted physique. Of course, injecting yourself with sketchy experimental science juice comes with a few minor drawbacks. Like completely losing your absolute mind over absolutely nothing before practice. We are talking about pure, unadulterated chemical rage. Smashing a perfectly good metal locker into tiny little pieces just because someone accidentally looked at you wrong. The coaching staff simply labeled these violent, psychotic breakdowns as extreme passion for the game. Because admitting the horrific truth would ruin their precious undefeated season. And the billionaire owners? They were entirely too busy swimming in giant vaults of merchandise money to care about their players slowly turning into violent, radioactive mutants. Why would you ever try to fix a severely broken system when that exact same system is currently printing you endless millions of dollars every single week? The locker room became a highly toxic laboratory, completely isolated from any actual league rules, legitimate drug tests, or basic human decency. It was absolute perfection. But keeping a secret this massive requires a highly sophisticated supply chain. And believe me, the actual delivery method was even more ridiculous than the side effects. The league constantly bragged about having the absolute strictest security protocols in the world. They claimed their stadiums were impenetrable fortresses of pure athletic integrity. You had specialized guards scanning every single piece of luggage, looking for absolutely anything out of the ordinary. A completely flawless system, right? Well, almost. Enter the team doctor, or rather a highly paid, slimy lawyer pretending to be a doctor, holding an all-access VIP badge and a miraculously glowing briefcase. Apparently, top-level security metal detectors simply do not register the existence of experimental radioactive juice when the guard is holding a very thick stack of cash. Once inside the locker room, these highly illegal DNA-altering chemicals were conveniently labeled as standard medical supplies. Because obviously, fluorescent green liquids are just vitamin C. The delivery guy would pop open the magic briefcase, and the entire room would light up like a cheap sci-fi movie. It was delivery day, folks. The head coach, who publicly preached about hard work, would personally distribute these glowing, radioactive candies to his favorite players like it was absolutely nothing. To avoid any unwanted suspicion on the field, the players would simply mix the bizarre neon chemicals straight into their standard, team-issued plastic water bottles. Right there on national television, surrounded by millions of adoring fans, our golden boy would take a massive chug of pure, unadulterated chemical enhancement juice. Commentators literally watched them drink glowing neon liquids on live TV and seriously called it a special proprietary electrolyte blend to keep them properly hydrated. But what about the random drug tests? The league strictly promised that cheaters would be caught immediately by their completely foolproof and rigorous testing program. It turns out that a foolproof testing program becomes remarkably useless when the testing officials are extremely eager to accept large bags of unmarked $100 bills. If bribery somehow failed, players resorted to the classic bait and switch. They literally used fake bladders filled with clean urine provided by their sober friends. Yes, you heard that right. Multi-millionaire professional athletes were secretly carrying warm plastic bags of somebody else's pee just to secure their glorious championship rings. The delivery system was a beautifully orchestrated criminal masterpiece, and with the chemical fuel securely in their veins, it was time to destroy the actual competition. So game day finally arrives. The highly anticipated moment when all those secretly smuggled magical green vitamins are put to the ultimate athletic test on national television. Our juiced-up superstar steps onto the grass. He is no longer just a standard football player. He has evolved into a terrifying, incredibly angry, radioactive mountain. He tackles a completely normal opponent with such devastating cartoonish force that he literally leaves a smoking crater right in the middle of the 50-yard line. Standard laws of physics were completely suspended. You had linebackers outrunning sports cars and quarterbacks tossing the football so aggressively it practically caught on fire. Just watch him throw. The ball leaves his hand looking less like a standard sports object and more like a glowing green meteorite re-entering the atmosphere. And what about the referees? Those brave guardians of the rules suddenly developed selective blindness whenever our radioactive mutant committed extremely obvious and violent personal fouls. Instead of throwing the yellow penalty flag, the referee was too busy praying for his own life, hoping the massive green monster would not eat him. Touchdown celebrations became highly destructive events. Why just spike the football when you have enough chemical energy to literally rip the steel goalpost out the ground? The head coach stood on the sidelines, completely ignoring the blatant structural damage to the stadium, clapping his hands together like a proud, incredibly delusional father. Meanwhile, up in the luxury VIP box, the billionaire owner was practically foaming at the mouth with joy. Brutal violence equaled absolutely spectacular television ratings. The media praised this unhinged brutality as peak athletic performance. They called him a generational talent instead of a ticking chemical time bomb waiting to explode. He stands over his destroyed opponents, flexing his hilariously inflated balloon arms, literally sweating out the neon green evidence for the entire world to clearly see. The commentators were screaming in absolute pure ecstasy. Nobody cared about fairness, player safety, or the long-term health consequences of becoming a human science experiment. It was no longer a sport. It was a wildly entertaining gladiatorial bloodbath, heavily sponsored by shady underground laboratories and extremely questionable medical professionals. But when you explicitly put uncontrollable mutant monsters on the field, the league eventually has to work overtime to cover it up. How did they hide it? So, how exactly did the highest authorities in professional sports react to seeing massive radioactive mutants destroying their expensive stadiums? Did they immediately panic? Absolutely not. The billionaire owners looked at the completely broken, violently chaotic football field and saw nothing but glorious, skyrocketing television ratings and endless profits. Player safety? That adorable little concept was aggressively thrown right out the top-floor luxury window, right alongside standard medical ethics, drug testing rules, and basic human decency. The league desperately needed a brilliant cover-up story to explain why their athletes were suddenly bench-pressing pickup trucks. So they launched a massive PR campaign. They forced the head coaches to stand behind podiums, sweating profusely, lying directly to our faces about the miraculous benefits of drinking plenty of water. And the best part? The absolute gullibility of the general public. Fans completely bought the ridiculous lies, enthusiastically purchasing millions of expensive jerseys while entirely ignoring the glowing green sweat. Behind closed doors, those slimy defense attorneys were successfully bribing anyone who dared to ask questions, effectively silencing legitimate journalists with giant bags of cash. Whenever a scandal threatened to break, the league simply announced a so-called independent investigation, funded entirely by the exact same people committing the actual crimes. They proudly presented corrupt officials acting as neutral judges, wearing literal blindfolds, while carefully examining the glowing green evidence, finding absolutely zero wrongdoing whatsoever. To maintain the pathetic illusion of strict rules, they would randomly suspend a totally unknown rookie for accidentally taking some standard over-the-counter allergy medicine. Meanwhile, the massive glowing monster who single-handedly destroyed 3 defensive linemen was happily handed the most valuable player trophy and a massive contract extension. It was the ultimate hypocritical circus, a multi-billion-dollar empire completely built on a very fragile foundation of dangerous experimental chemicals and spectacular media lies. The supply chain of underground magic vitamins only grew larger, with fixers bringing in even bigger briefcases to satisfy the endless, insatiable demand for power. For a while, everyone was perfectly happy. The owners swam in giant vaults of gold, and the players enjoyed their brief moments of absolute godhood. But here is the universal truth about pumping your fragile human body full of sketchy, glowing chemicals. Eventually, the incredibly devastating side effects come knocking. You simply cannot trick Mother Nature forever. The human body was definitely not designed to process massive amounts of glowing neon green radioactive monster juice. The glorious illusion shattered. The massive balloon muscles suddenly began to awkwardly deflate, and their beautiful hair started falling out in giant, embarrassing cartoon clumps. Our invincible golden boys were physically falling apart. At 25 years old, They suddenly had the creaky joints and failing internal organs of an 80-year-old. But the physical decay was nothing compared to the psychological meltdowns. Enter the infamous roid rage, where absolutely minor inconveniences triggered violent, apocalyptic emotional explosions. Imagine a 300-pound professional athlete screaming violently and physically attacking a completely innocent plastic water cooler just because it did not dispense water fast enough. The panicked head coaches desperately tried to spin the narrative. They nervously blamed these psychotic public meltdowns on the intense pressure of the championship season. Behind closed doors, it was far worse. The sudden, terrifying rage meant destroyed living rooms, terrified families, and a massive pile of extremely expensive divorce papers. The league's dedicated PR team worked overtime, paying off local police departments to quietly lose the domestic disturbance reports and keep the ugly truth hidden. Then came the terrifying medical emergencies. Hearts that had been pumped full of unregulated chemical sludge began sputtering and skipping beats during completely routine practices. And where was the team doctor? That slimy lawyer immediately packed up his glowing briefcase and sprinted away the moment someone actually needed real medical attention. If you looked at their x-rays, it resembled a horrific science experiment gone wrong. But the league strictly classified those medical records as top secret. The billionaire owners did not care about broken toys. When one mutant collapsed, they simply tossed him aside and offered a shiny contract to another. It was a ruthless, terrifying meat grinder. They aggressively chewed up young, hopeful athletes, squeezed out every profitable drop, and casually tossed away the shattered remains. The glorious dynasty was secretly built on a tragic foundation of failing livers, broken families, and severe depression hidden beneath thick layers of golden merchandise. They thought they had successfully buried the ugly truth forever, but they completely forgot one crucial detail: an angry, betrayed player with absolutely nothing to lose. Every massive criminal empire eventually falls because of one tiny mistake. In this particular case, it was refusing to pay a discarded backup player his guaranteed medical bonus. Meet our unlikely hero, a heavily mutated, severely injured former superstar who was suddenly cut from the team roster and left with incredibly expensive hospital bills to pay. When the billionaire owner completely refused to cover the medical costs, our angry giant decided that absolute revenge was significantly sweeter than keeping their dirty little neon secrets. So he picked up the phone and directly called the only people who love a good, filthy scandal even more than sports fans: the beautiful, ruthless tabloid media. He did not just bring crazy stories. He brought hard, physical evidence, binders full of fake prescriptions, heavily redacted receipts, and actual glowing green radioactive vials of juice. As an incredibly dedicated, trashy journalist, I obviously took one look at this glorious mountain of illegal pharmaceutical evidence and immediately started snapping highly profitable front-page photographs. Word quickly reached the slimy defense attorneys. They realized their completely flawless underground operation was rapidly collapsing, faster than a deflated football in a freezing winter playoff game. The billionaire owner absolutely lost his mind. He aggressively threw a massive, unhinged temper tantrum inside his luxury suite, violently ripping up his own precious stack of cash. They desperately tried to deploy their classic emergency backup plan. They immediately offered the angry whistleblower a gigantic golden briefcase completely stuffed with silent, untraceable hush money. But you simply cannot bribe a man whose internal organs are actively failing. He aggressively slapped the shiny briefcase away, letting the green dollars fly into the wind. Back at the stadium, the panicked coaching staff initiated a full lockdown. They frantically shoved their extremely sketchy playbooks and medical files into heavy-duty industrial paper shredders. But it was far too late for a cover-up. We had the exclusive scoop of the century, and I happily slammed my fist onto the giant publish button. The explosive story officially broke at midnight. Millions of digital screens and printed newspapers simultaneously screamed the exact same glorious headline. The Golden Dynasty is completely fake. Even the heavily bribed police officers could not ignore this massive public exposure. The absolute undeniable proof was now trending wildly across every single social media platform worldwide. The magnificent glowing house of cards was finally collapsing in real time. And honestly, watching billionaires violently panic is the greatest spectator sport in the entire world. The very next morning, the exact same media outlets that called them genetic demigods suddenly turned into vicious, angry wolves, entirely hungry for blood and scandal. Every single camera, microphone, and aggressive tabloid journalist aggressively swarmed the stadium, creating an absolute circus of screaming questions and blinding white photography flashes. This was the precise moment the highly paid, slimy defense attorneys finally earned their massive paychecks, stepping up to the microphone to deliver absolute comedic gold. The first classic defense strategy was always the tainted supplement lie. They seriously claimed their completely pure protein powder was somehow accidentally manufactured with radioactive steroids. Yes, because we all know legitimate health factories frequently mix up standard vanilla whey protein with illegal underground genetic mutation juice on a regular basis. If that utterly failed, they would desperately blame their pregnant wives, publicly stating they accidentally swallowed her fertility medication instead of their daily morning vitamins. And miraculously, those simple female fertility pills somehow caused a massive professional linebacker to rapidly gain 40 pounds of pure, unadulterated, vein-popping green muscle mass overnight. My absolute personal favorite was the Adderall defense. Apparently, every single giant football mutant suddenly suffered from severe attention deficit disorder right before the playoffs started. Meanwhile, the deeply concerned head coach, who literally handed out the glowing pills yesterday, looked deeply shocked and immediately threw his beloved superstar under the bus. He stood before the angry cameras, wiping away fake, invisible tears, declaring he had absolutely zero knowledge of any illegal substances anywhere inside his sacred locker room. But the ultimate Oscar-worthy performance belonged to the billionaire owner. He bravely played the ultimate betrayed victim while secretly hiding his rapidly growing mountain of cash. He bravely stated that his incredibly pure, wholesome organization was severely damaged by one single rogue player acting entirely alone in the dark shadows. They perfectly constructed a totally fictional narrative where the team was perfectly innocent and the heavily mutated radioactive giant had somehow tricked everyone for multiple years. It was an incredibly pathetic symphony of lies. The player lied, the coach lied, the billionaire lied, and absolutely nobody in the room believed a single word. But since the truth was finally out, the league absolutely had to deliver a severe punishment to restore their precious integrity. Or did they? The league commissioner aggressively marched to the podium, looking absolutely furious. He loudly promised swift, brutal justice to completely cleanse the beautiful sport of this horrific stain. They announced massive suspensions and heavy fines, creating an incredibly dramatic spectacle designed specifically to convince angry fans that they were finally taking player safety seriously. But if you actually pull out a calculator and do the basic math, this so-called brutal punishment was nothing more than a hilarious, microscopic slap on the wrist. Our giant radioactive mutant received a terrifying 4-game suspension, which basically meant he got a heavily paid, extremely relaxing tropical vacation right in the middle of the grueling season. Naturally, the slimy defense attorneys immediately appealed the harsh decision. They magically reduced the suspension down to exactly 2 games because of a tiny misspelled word in the paperwork. Oh, the absolute horror! How will he ever survive resting his incredibly mutated muscles for 14 days while still collecting his massive, multi-million-dollar guaranteed contract? The highly complicit head coach was sternly ordered to pay a $50,000 fine for completely failing to notice his players turning into massive, glowing green monsters. He paid the tiny fine straight out of his massive bonus check, gave another fake public apology, and immediately went right back to screaming aggressively at the remaining players. Justice was truly served, right? The system worked perfectly. The coach learned his very important lesson and definitely never, ever distributed sketchy magical vitamins again. Wink, wink. And what about the billionaire owner who actively funded the entire underground chemical operation? The league bravely slapped his franchise with a massive $1 million penalty. $1 million sounds huge to us, but to a guy who practically sweats pure gold, that is literally just dropping some spare pocket change between his luxury couch cushions. He gladly paid the completely meaningless fine, kept all the incredibly massive television broadcast profits, and securely locked the fake golden championship trophy inside his shiny private vault. Meanwhile, the fake doctor who supplied the illegal DNA-altering juice quietly disappeared into the dark shadows, carrying his glowing briefcase to the next wealthy sports franchise willing to pay. So basically, absolutely nobody went to actual prison, nobody lost their extremely lucrative jobs, and the incredibly dirty money just kept aggressively flowing into their deep pockets. The circus packed up its tents, but the severely broken athletes were left to deal with the terrifying aftermath. Let us look at the true, incredibly depressing legacy. The trophies look beautiful in the museum, but every single championship ring from this era officially comes with a massive, invisible, glowing green asterisk permanently attached. The retired superstars are not living the glorious dream. They are quietly struggling to literally walk down their own stairs, completely shattered by experimental chemistry. If you visit the legendary Hall of Fame, you might notice that those shiny bronze statues of our mutated heroes constantly sweat highly radioactive neon slime. The league successfully rebranded themselves as the ultimate champions of player safety. They aggressively printed colorful banners while completely ignoring the actual disabled veterans. It is the perfect corporate tragedy. You violently sacrifice your long-term health for temporary billionaire profits, and then everyone pretends to be absolutely shocked. But do you honestly think the cheating ever stopped? Every year, a brand new batch of naive rookies steps into the exact same dark locker rooms, and waiting in the shadows are the exact same slimy lawyers, happily carrying upgraded, untraceable briefcases filled with the next terrifying generation of performance enhancers. As long as the insanely wealthy owners demand brutal entertainment and the adoring fans keep buying tickets, the vicious cycle of chemical destruction will never end. The neon green juice might have officially dried up, but this legendary scam remains the exact blueprint for every single modern sports dynasty operating today. So next time you see a massive genetic freak destroying opponents on television, just remember that Mother Nature probably had a lot of extremely expensive chemical help. Thank you for watching this absolute garbage fire of a documentary. Stay incredibly cynical out there, because in this billion-dollar league, the cheating absolutely never stops. Do not forget to violently smash that like button, forcefully subscribe to our channel, and share this video before the league's expensive lawyers force us to delete it. If you want more terrifying off-field rap sheets and hilarious billionaire scandals, drop a completely unhinged comment down below, suggesting our next massive investigation. Until next time, keep your eyes wide open and your sports drinks carefully inspected. This is your favorite trashy reporter, officially signing off into the shadows.